Recording. Hello guys, and welcome to another video with me, 𝗥𝗲𝗰𝗱𝗪𝗏 from eToro. And today I'm going to be destroying Palantir. Now, to avoid Palantir setting their counterterrorism software on me, I just want to put a disclaimer in the beginning of this video. First, the classic disclaimer, this is not financial advice. You should do your own research before investing in any stocks. Please do not come crying to me if you do or don't invest in Palantir and somehow end up losing a bunch of money. Even though, however, really, it's very hard to lose money if you don't invest in something. But I'm sure that people can blame me either way. The other disclaimer is that I don't do as much research for stocks that I am not personally invested in. When I am actually putting money on the line, then I do a lot more due diligence. But if I look at a company and it's not for me, then I typically stop doing research a lot sooner because I don't want to be wasting time on stuff that just doesn't feel right for my portfolio. And if you want to see my portfolio, please just follow the link in the description. You can go to eToro. My entire 10-year investing journey is on there, right from when I began investing when I was 19. So if you're a Palantir fan and you're new to this channel, I'm just going to explain how I value stocks so that you can see if the way that I value it is potentially different from how you value positions. If you're old to the channel, I have some exciting news. Me and my partner have just had an offer accepted on a house, and so we'll be moving into there shortly, hopefully. Obviously, there's a long journey to go before that happens, but we are currently in an incredibly small place. This place that you're seeing, I try and dress it up and make it look nice, but you're basically sat in what is 2/3 of the current apartment. It's absolutely tiny. This place is 20 square meters, I believe, and the place that we're going to be moving into is 70 square meters. And we just moved here because it's right near the sea and it's super, super cheap. And then once we've moved into there, I don't want to make this channel about my life too much. I want to keep it focused on investing, but I love it when other YouTubers show their space. So I'll give a tour around the house and I'll give a tour about where the channel is going, where I plan on taking it. Okay, that is enough about me. Back to Palantir and how I value stocks. All my valuations center around three things: core value, intrinsic value, and financial value, in that order. To way oversimplify this, imagine a burger. The core value of that burger is that all the time, people have wanted burgers for decades, and they're going to want burgers for decades more. People love the taste of burgers. People enjoy burgers. However, a burger with a high intrinsic value might be one that you can make for £1 and sell for £5, and it only takes 5 minutes to make. The intrinsic value can grow over time because the core value never changes. People love this burger for £5. It comes with chips. It's a fantastic, tasty burger, and they're going to want that for decades. But because you know that they're going to want that, because they're going to get hungry again tomorrow, then you can invest a lot of money innovating how you make this burger. So you can make this burger cheaper, but keep the quality the same. So long as you understand the core value of your product, you can keep increasing the intrinsic value. And then finally, if those two things are in place, then you can look at the financial value. For example, McDonald's, if we were continuing this analogy, you might want to look at their lease agreements and all the other things surrounding the business so that you can make sure that just because they've managed to produce something with a high intrinsic value, they are actually still running the business efficiently. Of course, it was the point at which McDonald's started becoming a landlord that the business really flourished. So financial and value is really important, but only if core and intrinsic value are already there. So here's the core value. Palantir has three main segments. They are Foundry, Apollo, and Gotham. Let's start with Gotham. I think Gotham is the aspect of the business that most people that seem to be invested in stocks seem to be most excited about, because these government contracts are shrouded in mystery about how they're going to actually select Palantir for these government contracts. But the amount of agencies that they are promising or hoping to touch is pretty ubiquitous. They're looking at defense, intelligence, law enforcement, things like counterterrorism and stuff like that. Foundry is the aspect of the business that me personally, I would be more interested in, because the whims of the capital markets are more predictable than the whims of the government, because capital markets don't have elections every 4 years, and also their wants and needs just remain generally more consistent. So The areas that they are looking to breach into are healthcare, energy, finance, and to optimize operations, supply chains, and business processes through data-driven works.
It helps you create a full fidelity, real-time representation of all of the concepts, actions, and decisions within your business. Every truck, every warehouse, every shipment, every delay, that can then be used by AI.
So that to me all makes sense. That's the bit of the business that actually there's some ability to value that for me personally. And there's Apollo, I got to read this off the screen, enables autonomous software deployment and management across cloud and on-premises environments.
It operates using a hub and spoke architecture, where the Apollo hub is the platform control plane. And you'll deploy an agent into each Kubernetes cluster or environment that you want to manage with Apollo.
Look, I could do tons of research to try and understand that more. Please, by all means, if you understand that, could you put a more simpler explanation in the comment section? For me, that's a bit of a word sandwich. As a core value, counterterrorism isn't something that's going to go away tomorrow. Unfortunately, we can be pretty assured that that's going to be there for decades to come. But let's imagine for a moment that counterterrorism was a soft drink. I remember that one time Coca-Cola fired an employee for attempting to sell Coca-Cola's secret ingredient to Pepsi. Pepsi told Coca-Cola that this employee was trying to sell their secret ingredient to them. This is interesting because for investors, this shows that Pepsi no longer needs or wants Coca-Cola's secret ingredients, and that Coke is pretty much immune from someone trying to steal their secret ingredients, making it incredibly cheap to keep secrets. And it means if someone came along with a tastier cola, like say Pepsi, or a cheaper cola, like say Pepsi, then it means that people are still probably likely to buy Coke regardless because, well, fuck Pepsi. But now imagine that Palantir is not a soft drink, but it is counterterrorism software. Can you imagine the US military discovering a better counterterrorism software and not going for that? Because, well, fuck Pepsi. Or potentially even worse, consider how expensive it's going to be for Palantir to keep their secrets when they can't pay employees with shares that are 500 times their earnings. Or what is going to happen when these employees a few years from now start gaining the rights to start selling these shares? So the fact that Palantir is currently doing impressive stuff means nothing if we can't value how impressive this stuff they're doing is. It's all well and good to say, well, they wouldn't have these contracts if they weren't incredible, but consider the fact that we all had Windows Vista and we all thought it was shit. The second Windows 8 came along, we all got rid of it as quickly as possible. And so ubiquity does not equal longevity. We absolutely need to know how good a product is from its competition in order to be able to measure its value. Did I mention already that the PE ratio is 500 times earnings? The thing that I always check next is the PE ratio suppressed because that the earnings are a small percentage of the revenue, and if they were to slow down on R&D, would their earnings increase significantly? Because just doubling your earnings by shrinking down your R&D spend, Amazon does this quite often. They have hugely high PE ratios, but the fact is they invest a lot in R&D because they know that people in the future are simply going to want faster deliveries and cheaper deliveries, so they can invest a lot in electric driverless vehicles and all that such stuff. And when they slow down on their spending, their earnings can actually double. So if you have a price to earnings of 50, once that doubles, that drops to 25, which is very reasonable. In this instance, their earnings could become 100% of their revenue, 100% of their revenue, and their price to earnings would still be 125. And to put that again into context, that means that Palantir, if their earnings were 100% of their revenue, would take 125 years to pay you back. That is there to give you an idea of how much growth is needed to justify the share price. Now, the next thing, with a company like this, I would want to see flawless valuation metrics. But the very next thing that I always look at when I'm really excited about a stock to just check is share dilution. And they have diluted the shares. I just can't even believe this. Like, by 50%. And I checked, guys, They didn't do a share split. They did a share split 5 years ago. The 50% is since that share split. If I'm wrong about this, please tell me in the comment section. But I don't think I'm wrong. And if you are an employee at Palantir, this is exactly like the dot-com bubble, okay? If you're watching this video, this is what they were doing in the dot-com bubble. Incredibly smart software engineers. It kind of baffles me because the mistake that people make is they think if you're smart in one subject, you're smart in all subjects. You don't need to be that smart in finance to be good at finance. I really, really believe that. But the fact is that actually it's kind of the opposite. The more smart you become in one subject, the more dumb you seem to become in other subjects. And in America, doctors are actually one of the worst categories, despite being such high earners, for financial management. So, and in the dot-com bubble, these people developing pets.com and stuff like that, they trusted the financial people that they were experts in their field. And they trusted the valuations of their business, despite them being astronomically high relative to the earnings. And they were totally happy with the huge amount of equity that they were being given and being told how much this equity was worth. They were totally happy with that paycheck. And so what I believe is that if employees are being handed £1 million worth of equity in Palantir, they aren't going to be questioning it. What they're going to be doing is just borrowing against that equity and be getting lovely houses and cars. And then finally, the only other positive is that debt is manageable. But what? Debt? Seriously? This company could sell 0.03% of their shares and pay off the entirety of their debt. And like, there might be some weird maths that I could try and do to check how much money they are saving by using debt rather than selling shares. But the savings are, I bet, are going to be negligible relative to, especially to the peace of mind of just having this debt gone. And then also, there might not be any savings. I can't imagine that there would be much savings. When the share price is 500 times the earnings, you sell a tiny amount and you pay off all the debt. What are you doing? The only thing you might be doing is being afraid of allowing too much equity onto the open market. Because you like the share price being so high, and so you're trying to keep as many shares as possible to a ridiculous extent in order to keep the share price where it is. But who would do that? To conclude, we have a company in a really important space that clearly have, for the time being, very good top-of-the-range technology, and are at least a very serious contender for all these huge government contracts. But unless you're the government, it's very hard to price these contracts and price this technology. And even if you are the government, probably still quite hard to price it. The fact is, when valuations become hard to assess, when the value of something becomes hard to assess, generally speaking, you want a lower price to earnings ratio. If I was looking for a house on the high street and I found a house that I absolutely loved, and it was 10% below market value, I might do a bit of digging to understand why it's being sold for less. But if I find out that the buyer just wants to get rid of it because they want to move to Spain, then I'll be absolutely delighted. However, if I found another house that is just absurdly highly priced, and it's all weird, it's in a bit of an odd location, it's got circular windows, it's the person selling it says it's this hyper rare Art Deco design, and the last buyer spent double market value to have it, I would steer well clear of that because I just do not understand what I'd be buying. And so it's so funny because I think a lot of people are like me in that way. Very few people use that when investing in stocks, and it's why we get these stories of people investing large sums of money into things like Palantir, because most people they don't want to put $5,000 into something to make 10 grand in 5 years. What most people want to do is they want to put $1,000 into something in the hope that they might make 20. And the thing that really upsets me about this, and the reason I'm making this video, because I don't like making critical videos on stocks, is that if Palantir drops enormously in value, people will blame the stock market rather than people's greed. The stock market is not a crazy, absurdly hard thing to value. In fact, actually, it's quite simple, but it's not hard to also make people greedy. And you see that a lot with these overvalued stocks. But the thing that you really need to do if you want to be a super successful investor is